Season 1 of House of the Dragon revolves around Rhaenyra Targaryen, who is next in line to inherit her father's throne and become the first woman to rule the realm. Today we'll divide our analysis into 5 topics, covering episodes 1 to 5, and we'll start with Rhaenyra inheriting the throne. We first meet Rhaenyra in episode 1 as she arrives at the Red Keep riding her she-dragon Syrax. She is the daughter of King Viserys, the ruler of Westeros, and queen consort Aemma. At the beginning of the season, Rhaenyra's best friend is Alicent Hightower. The queen is pregnant and the king hopes for a boy to succeed him. But when Aemma and the boy die in labor, Viserys decides to name Rhaenyra heir to the throne. And this is a big deal because gender constraints are omnipresent in House of the Dragon, and it will have an impact on her perceived legitimacy. Despite that, Rhaenyra is set to become the first queen of Westeros, and the deal is sealed in a lavish ceremony at the end of episode 1, where lords swear loyalty to Rhaenyra. As progressive as this is, some at court believe that a girl heir weakens the Targaryens. Corlys Velaryon suggests so in episode 2. And so begins a campaign led by political actors to marry their daughter to the newly single king with the hopes to have a male heir to succeed Viserys instead of Rhaenyra. And Rhaenys tells Rhaenyra that she should not expect to be queen if the king has a son. She says, "When that boy comes of age, the men of the realm will expect him to be heir, not you." Rhaenys is correct to manage Rhaenyra's expectations because she herself was denied the throne because she was a woman. She adds, "That is the order of things." So when the king announces that he will marry Alicent Hightower, Rhaenyra is right to feel betrayed. On the one hand, her friend Alicent did not tell her anything, and on the other hand, Rhaenyra knows that this new marriage could create a challenging claim if the king and Alicent have a son. And they eventually do. In episode 3, the king holds a celebration to highlight the second birthday of Rhaenyra's half-brother, Aegon. He could be a direct challenge to her claim because he's male. And Viserys acknowledges this reality when he tells Rhaenyra that he will protect her claim over Aegon's claim. He says, "I swear to you now, on your mother's memory, you will not be supplanted." If you're new here, you might like my other videos in my Hottie playlist, so subscribe to the channel for more, and if you like this video, like the video. In addition, Daemon also presents a direct threat to Rhaenyra's claim in the first episodes. When Daemon sends a letter from Dragonstone, it reads, "Daemon Targaryen, rightful heir to the Iron Throne." So Daemon ultimately believes that Rhaenyra's claim is illegitimate because she's a woman. We will explore Rhaenyra and Daemon's relationship later in this video as well as in part 2, so keep that little detail in mind. In the end, Rhaenyra's claim was vulnerable from the start, and some players will exploit this to their benefit. In our Alicent analysis, we saw how the Greens have a vested interest in undermining Rhaenyra's claim to place Aegon on the throne, a problem Rhaenyra would not have if she was born a male. This brings us to our next segment, unprepared but fit to rule. Although Rhaenyra is heir to the throne, Viserys is not adequately preparing her to assert her power and build her leadership, and it weakens her position at court, especially as some are plotting to undermine her claim. For example, when Rhaenyra suggests the king should send dragon riders to defeat the crab feeder, the king shuts her down in front of the whole council and sends her away. The king should not undermine his successor in front of the political elite because it goes against Rhaenyra's interests. This is just one of many examples of the king undermining her claim in public, and Rhaenyra is not stupid. She knows what's up. This places Rhaenyra on the defense in the face of a slow but growing challenge to her claim. In episode 2, Rhaenyra tells Viserys she wants to be heard. In essence, she wants her father to prepare her to rule, but the king shuts her down again. So, Rhaenyra is the official heir to the throne, but in the background, some bad actors are plotting to create a rival claim. And the king is blindsided. It will all come crashing down in the second half of the season. Despite her lack of experience, Rhaenyra shows that she could be a capable leader, and if Viserys started to prepare her, she could be fit to rule. For instance, when Daemon steals an egg and challenges Rhaenyra's claim, she shows up on her dragon and confronts her uncle face to face. In the end, she peacefully retrieves the egg. Viserys is angry at Rhaenyra because she acted on her own. She broke the rules. But she correctly points out that she got results. Yes, Rhaenyra is bold and brave, but she must also learn to value diplomacy, especially as the Greens play the long game to challenge her claim. For instance, Rhaenyra berates Lady Jocelyn after she's heard criticizing Viserys. This approach does nothing to help her and may contribute to powerful houses siding with Aegon in the future. In contrast, we see Alicent building diplomatic relationships at the same event. The difference here is this. Odo has been conditioning Alicent for years to play the Game of Thrones, whereas Viserys shields Rhaenyra from court politics. Maybe Rhaenyra would value diplomacy if Viserys actually prepared her to rule. And it will have an impact on her ability to build alliances. In a later video, we'll see how Rhaenyra overestimates support for her claim. But for now, Rhaenyra continues to play by her own rules, which brings us to our next topic: Rhaenyra's privileges and duties. We just saw how gender played a role in Rhaenyra's life and claim to the throne. But Rhaenyra's political position means that she benefits from more freedom than other girls at court. That said, Rhaenyra often fails to recognize her privilege, and it can cause frictions. But her privilege will eventually come at a cost. We'll see that in part 2. Although it's true that Rhaenyra is more privileged, her freedom is not absolute. For instance, as heir to the throne, Rhaenyra is expected to get married. This would secure her line of succession and strengthen her claim. Viserys knows this, but Rhaenyra does not want to get married. And Viserys loses it in front of the whole court. So once again, the king publicly undermines her legitimacy. This is part of a broader pattern. The king undermines her claim in front of powerful houses at court, but reaffirms his support for Rhaenyra in private away from political actors. So Rhaenyra believes in her legitimacy, but some at court are not so sure anymore. This is dangerous. After the exchange, Rhaenyra runs off on her horse. She complains to Sir Criston Cole about her duty to marry and decides to spend the night in the woods. The scene that follows is used to show the contrast between Rhaenyra and her father. When Rhaenyra is attacked by a boar, Criston wounds the animal before Rhaenyra unleashes her anger on the beast. In contrast, the king reluctantly kills the stag he did not even hunt, and it takes him 3 tries. Again, this scene plays in front of everyone and makes Viserys look weak. And when Rhaenyra returns to camp covered in blood and carrying the boar she killed, her father appears even weaker in contrast. Despite these events, Viserys still needs to settle Rhaenyra's succession, and he's right to do so. Following Alicent's advice, the king decides to send Rhaenyra on a trip to find a husband. In this world, elites marry for politics and power, so it is a privilege to choose your partner. But when Rhaenyra fails to find a husband, the king decides to step in and broker a deal with the Velaryons. Although marrying Laenor seems convenient for Rhaenyra, as a woman and heir to the throne, she will never really be able to escape the duties of her role. More on that later. But eventually, Viserys will start preparing Rhaenyra to rule. In episode 4, we see her at the small council. Better late than never. Being the heir to the throne places Rhaenyra in a delicate position at court, which is the subject of our next topic. Rhaenyra's complicated relationships. She may not realize it yet, but her relationships with other players in the Game of Thrones will impact her legitimacy. First, there is Viserys. The king loves Rhaenyra. There's no doubt about it. But as a leader, he made multiple mistakes and hurt her claim to the throne throughout the season. This will make way for the Greens to usurp the throne by the end of the season. Then there is Sir Criston Cole. When Rhaenyra chose Sir Criston Cole to join the King's Guard, she was looking for a strong fighter. But later, she will exploit him for her own sexual pleasure, despite his oath of chastity. In the aftermath, Criston Cole will turn on her and join the Greens. So Rhaenyra's disregard for the rules can turn loyalists into enemies. Rhaenyra and Alicent's relationship is at the center of the conflict. At the beginning of season 1, Rhaenyra and Alicent shared a deep friendship. But tensions started rising when Alicent married her father. We heavily talked about the relationship between Rhaenyra and Alicent in our Alicent analysis. And then there is Daemon. At the beginning of the season, he's clearly angry to have been replaced as heir. And at first, he seems willing to challenge Rhaenyra's legitimacy. But as the season progresses, he changes his strategy and starts grooming Rhaenyra instead. In episode 1, it is suggested that Daemon is too impatient to win the Game of Thrones, but evidence shows otherwise. His plot to marry Rhaenyra will stretch over the course of multiple time jumps until he succeeds. Episode 4 highlights Daemon's predatory behavior towards Rhaenyra, who's still a teenager. For instance, we see him flirt with Rhaenyra and offer her wine. He says, "You've matured yourself." Daemon wants to groom Rhaenyra for his own political gain. The events of episode 4 is one instance of the grooming process. At night, Rhaenyra receives a letter from Daemon. He instructs her to take a secret passage and join him for a night on the town. Rhaenyra joins Daemon and is amazed by the city, and the pair end up at a street theater. That's when Rhaenyra realizes that the commoners would prefer Aegon to rule because he's male. Rhaenyra says that it doesn't matter what the common people think. This is interesting because, in contrast, the Greens will use favorable public opinion to justify Aegon's claim to the throne. So, it does matter. But Rhaenyra says, their wants are of no consequence. By the way, I'm working on a video analysis of Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, so subscribe for more. I'm really looking forward to share this with you. Back in Westeros, Daemon is not done with Rhaenyra for the night. He brings her to a sex club, which is disturbing considering her age. And he speaks of sex as an act of pleasure before kissing her. Daemon puts Rhaenyra in a dangerous situation because rumors start floating about their night out, and Odo eventually learns of their escapade and informs the king. In a previous video, we covered Odo's downfall as well as Alicent and Rhaenyra's confrontation. And Rhaenyra decides to lie. She says, "Daemon never touched me." Rhaenyra lies, but it is understandable because she would be in big trouble if they knew the truth. But her secret also depends on Daemon's discretion, so the night out will reshape their relationship. When Viserys confronts Rhaenyra, she tells him, "Were I born a man, I could bed whoever I wanted." So, gender inequalities remain a strong theme for Rhaenyra's arc, but Viserys implores Rhaenyra to start taking her responsibilities seriously. Later, Rhaenyra is sent moon tea, a sort of morning after pill, in case she's pregnant with Daemon. Nobody knows she actually hooked up with Sir Criston Cole. This brings us to episode 5. Competing for the throne. We meet the royal family in high tide, where Viserys traveled to arrange a wedding between Rhaenyra and Laenor Velaryon. While Corlys and the king negotiate official terms, Rhaenyra and Laenor are walking on the beach. Laenor is gay, so the wedding seems a bit odd, but Rhaenyra thinks this situation is ideal to maintain some freedom. So they negotiate their own unwritten terms. They agree to marry and have children to fulfill their duty to the realm, and then they would live their lives as they see fit. Now that everyone agrees, a wedding can be arranged, and it is the perfect occasion for houses of the realm to showcase their power. The Velaryons arrive in King's Landing in a show of force and opulence. Daemon makes a surprise return from exile, and Alicent shows up wearing green. We covered this in a previous video. Despite being the heir to the throne, Rhaenyra is upstaged at her own wedding, and so is Viserys. Many are taking this as an opportunity to assert their own power in the Game of Thrones. So Rhaenyra's wedding is not ideal to strengthen her legitimacy. And as if it wasn't enough, even at her own wedding, Daemon flirts with Rhaenyra, and she seems enamored with her uncle. She says, "Take me to Dragonstone and make me your wife." The wedding takes a dark turn when Sir Criston Cole murders Laenor's boyfriend, and it forces the public event to go private. We see Laenor and Rhaenyra getting married in front of their immediate family instead of the whole court. Once again, what should have been Rhaenyra's public business is taken private, and in this world, it will have an impact on her legitimacy because appearances are important. So, the last episode before the big-time jump into adulthood ends with danger. Rhaenyra's legitimacy is questioned on multiple fronts, and she is wildly ill-prepared to face a coup. Plus, she's surrounded by characters with questionable motives. Rhaenyra also exhibits bold qualities that will come handy in part 2 of this analysis, as she fights for her legitimacy and right to rule. It takes forever to make these videos, so thank you so much for watching. If you were entertained, you can subscribe to the channel, like this video if you like the video, let me know what you think in the comments below, and I will see you next time. Bye.